Just a Jewel with our host, Arthur Malik.
Welcome to Just a Jewel. I'm your host, Arthur Malik. Today I have an excellent guest by the name of Doug Decandia. He's a farmer. And when I met this gentleman, he was so intriguing because he's so informative when it comes to farming. Doug, just share a little bit about yourself.
Sure thing. Hey everybody, my name is Doug, as Malik said. I'm been farming professionally for about 10 years. Employed by the Food Bank for Westchester, which is known now as Feeding Westchester. So I grow organic, natural, non-synthetically used, processed vegetables, fruits for distribution to the community through soup kitchens and food pantries. So everything that we grow is, all natural, kind of high quality, high nutrition. And it's free to the people. So I've been doing that for about 7 years. We have 5 small farms, big gardens around the county. And I work, I guess we'll probably talk more about what that looks like. But I got into agriculture, into farming, I think primarily through my family. Not as farmers, but I grew up in Katona, which is about 20 minutes driving north of here, White Plains. And my father's family is from Italy. He immigrated here from southern Italy. And, I grew up in about 20 minutes from them, half an hour away from them, and we'd go over there for, Sunday dinners and things. My grandma would cook these big, beautiful meals for our family, our cousins and aunts and uncles. And I grew up with that real deep connection between good food and family and love. And I think for a long time, that stuck with me. I didn't grow up a farmer. I didn't grow up so I didn't say that. I grew up kind of in the suburbs, grew up in the woods though, surrounded by forest. Which was, I think, my family and then the environment that I grew up in were these two things that I've held in my soul for my entire life, and I think led me to do what I'm doing today. But just that connection to nature, and the kind of deep honor and respect for Mother Earth, that coupled with this internalization of what food is, of what family, and coming around those things, really led to my further development of it. I grew up, as I said, in Katona in the suburbs. I had these connections, but I also was an athlete. I played sports my entire life. So I had that kind of physical nature, and that was another lending into the agriculture, into the farming, into, you're using your body in agriculture and farming. You doing so many of the same things that, I learned growing up in sports, that commitment to a task, to a moment, showing up, the preparation, the taking care of your body so that you can, show up and be your best self in that moment. And that physical nature, so the family, the forest was like the spiritual, the athletics was that physical. There's the steep social side of agriculture, the necessity for food, for nutrition, to realize ourselves and to express our full humanity, the necessity of nutrition. And so I've doing agriculture, growing food, with that real framework of we need this as human beings to be our best selves, that create the community that, the community in the world that we need, and to make the changes to the one existing to create that better world. We need nutrition, we need good food. So there's also that real social necessity of agriculture. And the ecological, the environment, this is we come from the earth, we come from soil, you know, and food, growing food is a direct link to the earth. And when that's broken, I think part of us is broken. You know, we've lost connection to our mother, you know.
I noticed that you, initially when you said that you grow organic foods, you went quote unquote.
Yeah.
And organic foods is one of the biggest craze right now. People are going crazy because things are stamped organic. What was the purpose of quote unquote when you mentioned organic?
Yeah. I try and be careful when I use that word because of the state that it's in. And I think, you know, we were speaking before, and you're aware of like how that term organic, we as a consumer, we don't fully know what that means. And it's really hard often to know what that means. There's a lot behind that term. I think a lot of it is for marketing purposes, for selling a product, you know. The food industry has, you know, moved into the organic world, and so the same, you know, the same folks that are part of in the institutions and the corporations that are making a dollar off of food and selling food to the people are also using organic food as a means to make money. So I think it's really tricky in this moment to go to a store and know what you're buying. Organic means pretty much fundamentally it means that there aren't any synthetic chemicals used to grow that food. So that includes pesticides to kill insects and other pests, fungicides to kill fungi, other bacteria, and herbicides to kill weeds. So nothing that is processed in a laboratory is used to grow on that food.
On the organic food.
Or on the organic food. That's pretty much all it means.
Well, initially I thought it was some type of a ploy to just, as you just said, to capitalize, because it seemed like it just flourished out of nowhere. And I remember growing up, as we was discussing earlier before on camera, is that I remember the clothing detergent Tide. They would have Tide, and then 6 months later they would have Extra Tide. I remember being young and I played the trick on one of my sisters. I took the regular Tide and put it in the Extra Tide box and gave it to her to wash clothes. And she said, wow, look how great it worked. But it was the same Tide.
Yeah.
So I think me personally, I think it's a ploy when it comes to organic food, that they're doing the same thing. They're giving us the same food and they're just stamping organic on it.
Yeah. It's hard to know, honestly. You know, and I think fundamentally, like there's an issue, there's a deep set issue of the food system.
Right.
In that we go to a grocery store, you know, to get our food. That's, I think, too many people, like that is where food comes from, is from a grocery store. And so we are dependent then on what the grocery store and the whole everything behind that grocery store is telling us what that food is.
So what do you think we need to combat that? So, you know, so we won't frequently go into these grocery stores so we can obtain our own food. What do you think we need to do to combat that particular issue?
I think why I do what I do in the places that I do it, I think that we need more agriculture happening in the public. More people need to see agriculture, gardens, food growing, herbs, you know, trees that are growing fruit. We need to know where actually food comes from, because today I work with a lot of youth, some that are incarcerated, some that are in schools, and so many people, and adults as well, don't really know like that there's an existence of food before the grocery store.
Right.
Like that, the grocery store for many people is where food comes from.
Right.
But there's a field or a forest or somewhere
that produces
that farm that food is produced on.
Right.
And there are people part of that harvesting, part of that growing process of that food. So I think we need to do what we can, you know, societally, you know, socially, and like with each other to recognize and to remember like where food actually comes from. It comes from the earth. It doesn't come from a grocery store. As long as we think it comes from a grocery store, we're going to have our connection to that grocery store. And not to the earth.
And the comfortability be there to continuously eat from the grocery store.
Yeah, and then the system can make it more expensive, or like put this other label on it and then make it twice as much, or do these things. And then we need money then to access this food, this fundamental human necessity, which is nutrition. We need money to do that. And in this day where people don't are struggling for jobs, are struggling to find work, are struggling for money, like how are the masses of people, how are we supposed to get this need, this fundamental human need of nutrition, if we need money to buy it? And I think that's an issue that we have to talk about, because there are people dying today, not necessarily from starvation, not necessarily from like not having enough food, but there are so many people that are dying today in this country, in this county,
from eating the wrong
from
foods.
eating the wrong foods, from the diet-related diseases, the heart disease, the diabetes, the cardiovascular disease. All of these things that so many people are struggling with are connected right to our food.
It's amazing because there's less people in our country dying from starvation than there is from actually eating the wrong foods.
Yeah.
But I did a survey one time. I went to Scarsdale, New York, and I went into a supermarket and I went shopping. And I noticed how fresh the food was. It was more fresh, right? Then I went to Brooklyn and I went into the supermarket and I see how it was dead leaves, the fruit was rotten, and things was more rotten or bad foods compared to when I was in Scarsdale. Is this a planned thing? Do we put the worst foods in the worst neighborhoods and the best foods in the best neighborhoods? Is this something strategically planned? What do you think?
I think it's a systemic issue. So in a way, planned, because I think what we're looking at today is systemic and institutionalized racism. And that is manifesting and showing itself in everything, in education, in food, in housing, in incarceration, in all of these systems are founded. We live in a country, in a society that is founded on the ideology of white supremacy. So this country was built for white people. European settlers came, colonized, did their best at eradicating indigenous people from this land, who are still here. We are still on the Lenape land. We are on Turtle Island, which is the name, of the United States before it became the United States. This country was colonized to make another settler state for Europeans,
right,
for white people. And everything that we see today is still designed in order to keep power in the hands of those that are considered white. And now that term whiteness, like my ancestors came from southern Italy.
right.
They were not white when they came here. They were not considered white. They became white. The Irish, folks with light-colored skin now are considered white and given the advantages of this system. And what that looks like now in the food system can be used as a term called food apartheid. So in these places, as you said, like you go to Brooklyn, the food that's there is, it's not conducive to nutrition, to humanity, to like the real food that we need. And why is that? That's because, all of like what we're functioning in is a fundamentally racist state, where those with the advantages given to them by the state have what they need. You go to Scarsdale, predominantly white, neighborhood, municipality. They have what they need to be most human. You go to a place, and I'm not sure what neighborhood it was in Brooklyn, but if that was a neighborhood predominantly of color, black folks,
yes, it was.
People of color, like that, that food is going to be kind of a reflection of what the state sees that neighborhood as being. And so the food apartheid, I think, is a very apt term for what we're seeing, because it is a systemic issue. Some people use the term food desert to describe places, neighborhoods, areas, locations that don't have there isn't good food available.
Right.
You'll hear that word, food desert.
Mhm.
I think that doesn't really get to, that term doesn't really get to the issue at the foundation through the language. So desert is a natural ecosystem, right? And so when you use that term desert, it's kind of implying that this is a natural thing, you know, that this place, of course, it shouldn't have good food, you know, and so like it doesn't have good food, so we're gonna, you know, the folks there just won't have access to it.
But I think it's still, it equates still back to slavery days, right? When the blacks were slaves, they got the worst of the worst, right? They got the chitlins from the pig, right? That's the worst part of the pigs is supposed to be the chitlins. So they got the chitlins, the worst living conditions. And sometimes they get so used to having nothing, they be content with having nothing. So people are blind to the fact that they're being duped, right? So this is why it's imperative that I have you on my show so you can educate people to understand that they are being duped. And like you said, we need to start growing our own foods. We need to start growing our own foods so we can be more healthier, so we can live a little longer. Because when we don't, we're perpetuating this to our children. We are teaching them to eat out the cans, right? We're teaching them to eat processed foods because we're thinking it's okay. We don't understand the aspect of racism, that even in agriculture, racism exists. And I'm glad to have you on so you can definitely pinpoint that.
I think there's the internalized inferiority and superiority that is learned and intergenerationally learned.
Absolutely.
You know, so I have inherited a superiority complex because of my white skin, because of my upbringing. You know, I am brought through this world, I'm guided, I'm given all of these things, these leverages and privileges and advantages that over the course of time, like I inherit internally that I have a superiority in this place, in this country, in this society. As a white man, I do, you know, and that's what this white supremacy foundation really promotes, is it gives things to the white Christian male, you know, cisgendered people, certain things that uphold this ideology, you know, and the inferiority is the alternative.
Well, I believe both is inherited, you know, because inferiority is inherited in me because I'm a black man in this country, and the superiority is inherited in you because you're a white man in this country. However, because I'm inherited $5 million doesn't mean that I have to spend it. Right, exactly. So me being inherited with the inferiority doesn't mean that I will have that complex, right? It doesn't mean that I will feel less of myself because it was inherited to me. So I will not spend that inferiority. I will always say that I'm equal to whoever stands before me. And just because you inherit that white superiority doesn't mean that you have to spend that. You don't have to demean anyone that's in opposition to your color. You can still say that we are equal, at least in manhood or womanhood, in humanity. It might not be in education. It might not be in financial gains, but we are still equal when it comes to humanity.
I fully agree, and I think for us to realize that we all need the same access to the same fundamental human thing that are necessary for human beings. And I think when you see something like that that's happening, the food apartheid in certain communities, the housing discrimination, all of these things are saying that you are not allowed to have this, you know, and that other people are allowed to have it. That's what it's saying. And so I think what the food does, and the building of sustainable, like, food economies inside communities that is community driven. So communities, people, individuals have the determination of what their food system looks like. I think that is how we are going to transform what is happening, is when people are given the empowerment, the opportunity, the chance to determine for themselves how to, like, what they want to see, what a community wants to see, and not have this overarching, you know, force say this is what you get and this is what you don't get. I think that, you know, that's that is the system taking its toll on individuals, and we do internalize these things, you know, but we need to know that there's other options. And just as you're saying, like, we can have that choice. We do have that choice to express and to be that true self, to be our true self, and not take what we're given and say, you know, I'm better than you, I'm less than you, or anything. We are equal, we are human beings. But I think what we need in order to do that, in order to realize that, is nutrition. We can't do these things if we are putting poison in our bodies. You know, we need the foundation of healthy food, of the minerals and all of the life in food to support us being human and to support our equality and our becoming and doing the things that we need to do socially and internally and individually to make those changes so that we can live everybody has the opportunity to live their life.
One of the arguments, though, that those who live in the inner cities may have is that I don't have land to grow my own food. No, yeah. I'm not subjected to that. You know, I need my own land. How could we grow our own food if we don't have land? So we have to enter these grocery stores. My reply to that question or that statement would be that you can start with a flower pot in your house, right? You can grow just start with a little flower pot and grow your own greens. You see? So when we look for excuses, this is the easiest thing to find. Yeah. So we have to start somewhere. If you have to start with a little flower pot in your own home, just start, and gradually it'll grow. And then you pass that on to an individual. But the processed foods, what's the dangerous or the detrimental aspects of processed foods?
One thing is their just prevalence. I mean, the prevalence of bad food, of life like diminishing, suppressing food, is everywhere. Right? So the majority of people have access to that food, right? The folks that can afford to buy food, like you go to a store, it's most of the time not going to be that like vibrant, life affirming, like supporting food. It's going to be something that is very processed. Right. I think the issue with processed food is the more it is processed, the further it is from its natural form.
Nutrition.
And whole food, the food like a vegetable, a carrot, or you know, a grain of brown rice, or something that has not been changed from its natural form, our bodies know what that is. We, as human beings, have evolved with plants. Like we, you know, evolved as human beings, going around eating plants. Right. Our bodies know what that plant, that whole food, that natural food is. So when we eat that, there's a coherence, and our bodies can process it and turn it into muscle, into bone, into energy, into spirit. Like it can do that very easily. But when you take that food and you take it apart and you add things and you know, manipulate it, you process it fully out of its natural form, when we eat that, our bodies don't know what that is anymore because it's been so manipulated, it's been so changed from its natural form. And so, you know, we were talking before, like sometimes we eat something and then we're tired.
Feel sluggish,
Feel sluggish, or like our minds aren't working, you know.
Unnatural.
It's unnatural. You know, I think that's part of our body saying like, what you just put in me, I have to figure out what this is and then figure out how to turn it into energy, you know. But like, it's so unnatural. It's not, you know, I don't know what it is, so I have to use all of this other energy to figure, you know, to process it in the body, and that makes us tired, you know. And then I think just generations of, you know, it's been since the Green Revolution, which was when like the big explosion of chemicals and huge, you know, food quantities being grown. That was in the, you know, early mid 1900s. It's been a few generations since then, you know, since this dramatic change in how we grow food, that our generations now are expressing like this intergenerational degeneration of nutrition. Right. You know, so today, like the prevalence of autism, you know, the prevalence of these gluten intolerances, you know, of lactose intolerances, diabetes, you know, all of these things that are diet related, you know, have in relation that as our food is losing nutrition, human beings are degrading. We've seen that. We've seen as the earth is being, you know, rainforests cut down and chemicals poured on the earth to grow this food, that as the earth is dying, the food is losing nutrition and the people are dying. You know, there's so many people now that are dying because we are eating bad food. We're eating the food that the system is giving us, and that's killing us.
Where can we find you or hear you to disseminate this information? Where do you disseminate this information from? Are you on YouTube or?
Yeah, I do. I've been making videos, kind of how-to videos in the gardens. It is the Bionutrient Food Association, and I can send links or something to
This is your YouTube page?
Yeah, it's a YouTube videos page that's accessible for everybody. And what I try and do is talk about like simple ways to grow food in conjunction with nature, so that we can grow these foods, and we can do certain things, like as you're saying, just to get back. I know we only have little time, but back to the places where there isn't land, to do what you said, to grow in pots, to like work collectively in communities to access some of the land, but then also to look at the plants that are growing in the places. Mother Nature is trying to feed us and trying to heal us. The weeds that grow in places, that we call weeds, so many of those plants are medicine. So if we learn to see and to look at the things that we're often told not to look at and that they're disregardable, to look at them, to realize them, to honor them, and we can learn how to like use what we have to heal ourselves.
To turn from that ailing process to a healing process. We have the food to do that, to turn that ailing process to a healing process.
Yeah.
The information you gave is just wonderful, man. Honestly, and I still do eat processed foods. And after today, honestly, I'm gonna do my best, diligently, to stop eating processed food, because I want to live a little longer. Yeah. I do, and I know health is a new wealth.
Yeah, and I think the processed foods, though, it's going to take time for us as a society to get away from it. So I don't think we can't be hard on ourselves or hard on each other when we have to eat the foods that are here, but we also have to have the confidence that we can change what we're seeing now, and it can be better. That
we can do better.
Yeah,
that's good. Definitely, Doug the farmer, man. You definitely that was a whole lot of information. Yeah, I hope you guys that are watching, I hope you definitely embrace that, you grasp it, because I think it's imperative that we try to change our diets and we try to live a little longer. If not for ourselves, what about those who are following us, our children, our loved ones? We have to share this information because we need to live a little longer, man. This affects our mind, our bodies, our souls, our spirit. Everything is predicated on what we eat, our intake. So, but we have to see each other as equal before this can really transpire, because if you see someone or you feel someone is inferior than you, you will treat them as such. If you feel someone is superior to you, you will treat them as such. So it's imperative that we see ourselves as human beings and we see ourselves as equal, no matter what someone tells you. So it definitely was an honor to have you on, Doug. You have any last words you would like to say to the viewers?
If you want to learn more about growing food, I can be a resource, and I'll have my information with Malik. It's I feel my mission in life to grow food, to heal Mother Earth, heal people, heal myself. So if other people want to participate in that, want to learn some more that I can share, please reach out to me personally anytime.
Okay. We are only perfect in our imperfections, but when you know better, strive to do better. Just a Jewel with Arthur Malik. Peace.
Just a Jewel with our host, Arthur Malik.